You cannot cut your way to growth. Cutting your OpEx, cutting your media spend doesn't produce growth. It may produce profit in the short term, but it doesn't produce growth. And so now what we're seeing is brands that are leaner, that have made some of the hard decisions, that are sitting and looking at their businesses and saying, okay, what now?
This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by Omnisend, the top-rated email and SMS marketing platform for online merchants. Let's be real, email marketing isn't flashy, but that's what makes it great. Who needs chaos when you can have steady, reliable results? That's where Omnisend email and SMS comes in. Brands using it make $73 on average for every dollar spent. It's powerful yet intuitive and does the hard work while you kick back. Plus, their 24/7 support ensures no surprises. Check it out and use code CTC20 to get 20% off for your first month with Omnisend. Seriously, make boring work for you.
Welcome back, e-commerce playbook podcast. Today we've got a couple of new guests who I'm excited to have join me. I think they've both made an appearance before, but I don't know about with me. I don't know the last time you both were with me, but today we are talking YouTube. And I want to lay a little context before I introduce Rachel and Tony and let them take it away as to why we are revisiting this again in a short period of time, because we've talked about YouTube recently around some of the incrementality studies that came out that Andrew did a great podcast with Olivia from House about. But I want to set the tone for this conversation related to what we're seeing in the market more broadly over the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months. And what you may start to see as a theme across the content on this show. We feel like we have watched brands go through an era of austerity where step one to right-sizing the health of their business for a focus on profitability was to examine and eliminate waste. That there was a very frothy set of underlying OpEx and media spend, that the immediate solution to getting to a healthier state for their business was to cut and to bring rigor to a system of measurement and discipline to their spending in a way that gave them a path to life, to get back to default alive where they're producing EBITDA and cash flow. And that is a process we feel like we've walked brands through. There was a lot of emphasis last year on the relationship between marketing and finance and connecting those dots for the sake of that endeavor. But the challenge with that as a strategy alone is that you cannot cut your way to growth. Cutting your OpEx, cutting your media spend doesn't produce growth. It may produce profit in the short term, but it doesn't produce growth. And so now what we're seeing is brands that are leaner, that have made some of the hard decisions, that are sitting and looking at their businesses and saying, okay, what now? And in light of that, we feel a deep responsibility to our mission, help brands achieve predictable, profitable growth, to continue to revisit that last statement, to look at growth. And so we've talked about marketing moments, and we've had Krista from Tecovas, and we've talked about Bear, and we've talked about the baseball lifestyle guys, and we've highlighted how marketing moments and product development we think are a critical component of this. But we don't want to neglect the idea that there's also a desire for brands to spend more money in advertising for the sake of growth. And that is still an ambition, is to increase the amount of ad dollars they're spending, not to just decrease them. And so one area where we think that the innovations in marketing measurement are unlocking opportunity to spend more ad dollars profitably is in YouTube. We're seeing some real promising results here. So that's why we're here. So with that, Rachel, I'm going to have you introduce yourself first to everybody. Who are you? What do you do here at CTC?
Hi, my name is Rachel. Happy to be joining today. I lead the paid search team at CTC. So I've been working with Tony closely on developing strategies across paid search at
Awesome. And Tony?
Tony Chopp, the Vice President of Paid Media here at CTC, oversees all things media. And I think just generally speaking, like really excited to enter this new chapter of deploy more media dollars more successfully through this journey of incrementality. And we're really excited to talk about, like, so there's kind of three main areas that we want to talk through with you today, Taylor, around the YouTube thing. The first being like more specifically what we've observed through these incrementality studies and what we think that means for the measurement piece. And then we want to talk quite a bit about the the landscape of YouTube advertising and some of the complexities that are involved and why I think it's been challenging for brands. And lastly, we want to touch on like how we're approaching this with CTC clients in a way that sort of emphasizes test and learn and start small and scale into it and measure along the way. And all of it is wrapped in this idea that Rachel and I have been kicking around for the last 3 or 4 months, which we're calling YouTube 10X, which essentially represents an idea of, can we find a way to 10X an investment in a media channel, which to me speaks to, we're not talking about going from investing 10,000 to 20,000, so on and so forth. We're talking about your brand spent $20,000-$30,000 on YouTube last year. Can we spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in media and really have a sizable impact?
And there's a number of things that make us believe that YouTube's a place where that could happen. Is that one, there just aren't many places with the available scale that YouTube represents. And I think this is really important as a channel to start to think about the relationship between your media mix and the available inventory in total, and how that sort of, you think about the relationship between all these things as your investment into the potential of a channel. It's no different than thinking about the TAM of a product, right? Where if you go to develop a product, you want to think about how, if it goes really well and people love it, how much value could you capture out of that? And advertising sort of has a similar scaling factor to think about as you go to invest in, should I effort towards solving this channel? If yes, what does it have the potential to produce for me? And I think one of the things that's sort of under considered is that the upside of YouTube is just so much volume. There's so much available inventory there if you can get it right. I think this idea of where is there really meaningful, profitable, investable growth, many brands, that the problem that when we discover them is that on Meta in particular, they're actually out beyond their marginal frontier. And so the problem with that channel in many cases as the next tranche of growth lever is that they're already spending out past the efficiency. Now, there are solutions to that problem. It doesn't mean that they're stuck there and can never, therefore never increase spend, but it just means that it's not immediately obvious that there's a huge 10X opportunity of investment in that place. Whereas in YouTube, they're usually very under considered in that spot. And so the opportunity does exist to produce that kind of results. And for us at CTC, we've done forever. And Rachel, you lead search, which is the name of the department that in theory, historically, YouTube has sat under. And we used to sort of look at every Google ad product as search. But we're making a choice now to sort of bifurcate this idea, to say, no, search and YouTube are really different ad products in terms of what they're trying to solve. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that distinction of how we're taking YouTube and creating our own focus on it and why that's important for us to do as a service provider. What is different about YouTube versus search, and how brands should think about the role they play in their media mix?
I think this goes back exactly to what you just referred, Taylor, which is it's being very underserved. And the reason is because I'm sure a lot of listeners here have tried YouTube in the past, or maybe trying right now, using all different tactics and best practices possible. But in return, I'm pretty sure they faced a lot of disappointment on the platform numbers coming back really low than expected, and thinking, okay, it's better spend somewhere else. And then they basically may have closed the door and only spend like minimal amount. And that's why we're here, where we see a lot of our clients spending about less than 5% of their total media dollars towards YouTube. And I think we're really, during our early like exploration in YouTube, we found that YouTube is effective at driving revenue, but also the piece that we're missing is it's really effective at reaching new customers. So that's the part where we really want to start becoming more aggressively. And this incrementality measurement piece comes in place because of the platform numbers that are underreporting on what the actual impact is coming from YouTube. We want to make this right and start really, really utilizing this YouTube piece as we start to explore more and get through this journey.
Do you sell stuff online? If you're listening to this podcast, the answer is probably yes. And if so, you need Omnisend. Yes, that Omnisend. The powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email an SMS tool that helps you make 73 bucks for every dollar spent. The one that's so good, it's almost boring. Do you like watching steady lines go up and up and up? If so, just automate your email and SMS campaigns with Omnisend. Set it up once, then sit back and watch the sales roll in while you snooze. Oh, are you still awake? Then give Omnisend a try and start getting sales so steady they'll definitely put you to sleep. Just go to www.omnisend.com or click the first link in the show notes.
Yeah. I just want to add two things to that. I think that I totally agree. The reason why, there's two reasons why it's different. Number one is the measurement piece for sure. And if you think about it, everything else in the search landscape, we use brand search as an example, as an extreme example, super bottom of funnel, super high intent. And when you look at it in platform, the ROAS on brand search looks phenomenal. So if you're operating under this sort of basic assumption, which obviously people are more sophisticated than that, but look at in-platform return, make decision, it's really easy to go and look at search, particularly brand search, and go, great, that looks good. Or even non-brand search or shopping ads. So YouTube is different because the measurement really needs to be treated differently. The second piece is, and I'm going to actually pop up a slide here because I think this is a great segue.
Can I just add one thing to the measurement thing while you're doing that? Is that because I think this is really important, is that when YouTube for us was lumped into search, it sort of tends towards like comparing it to branded search, categorical search, shopping, PMAX. You look at them all in the same dashboard, you're going to, whether you sort of logically understand it to be that way or not, compare them to one another. And what we're really trying to emphasize is that these things cannot be measured the same. That's like first, like Tony, there's a stat, and maybe you're going to hit it, so I don't want to preview, about what percentage of YouTube right now is consumed on television.
Oh yeah, I got it. I can't wait to show you this.
Okay, because I think that it's just really important to understand the consumption of the media and how that affects measurement so dramatically when you think about this channel. But okay, I'm going to hand it back to you. Describe what we're looking at here for those of us who are just on audio as well.
Okay, so we're calling this the 4 dimensions of YouTube advertising, and every time we go at this slide, we come up with another dimension. So it's 4 now, and this is my Sora image, which has been a fun exploration as a side note as well. But so this is a thing that is very different in the YouTube product versus everything else in the search platform. So the dimensions of YouTube advertising are as such. There's bidding. So there's conversion-based bidding, cost per view bidding, and in true Google fashion, they give us 15 different options there. There's the layer of audience targeting, and there's subsets within that. There's the Google defined audiences like in-market and affinity and custom intent. And then there's also customer-based audience like remarketing, customer file, et cetera. So there's another dimension. There's another dimension of the customer state. So is it a new customer versus a returning customer? And how do we think about the structure of the campaign related to that? Now, Sora didn't pick up my fourth dimension here, which is creative, which is a whole nother vector of how we need to think about YouTube advertising that isn't as applicable or relevant on search. And then, Rachel, we came up with a fifth one here we were talking about recently, which was the ad format. There's all these different ad products that can be deployed on YouTube. So like, I mean, for me, honestly, practically over the past bunch of years, like it can feel like a little 4D, like you're sort of lost in space. Like, where do I begin? And so somewhat disorienting and overly complex as is the Google fashion, and confusing. And a really big part of this endeavor for Rachel and I has been to help outline a path through this maze, because every single one of these vectors can impact the end output. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is exactly right. And the main thing I want to highlight is that there's this complexity to this that has to be approached in a unique and novel way.
Yeah.
That this ad product, I think what we're sort of looking at is we have under-considered its potential impact across lots of dimensions. And so much of the advertising conversation, I think, for the last few years has honed into a very narrow set of dimensions. New customers, short-term click basis, immediate ROI, and that has been the singular focus for so much of the use. And now what we're seeing is brands have bigger businesses with more complex distribution, and need more consideration for how the ad product might impact the totality of their business. And so what you're describing is a tool that has a potential to open up impact on a broader set of places.
We're approaching each of these dimensions distinctly, but I want to talk about the bidding first and foremost, the bidding dimension. And I want to relate it back to like a specific setup that we have working right now. So for all of our YouTube exploration that we're doing with clients right now, we're starting with 3 independent campaigns. One is an awareness campaign. A second is a consideration campaign, and a third is a conversion campaign. And we're doing different things with the bidding at each of these stages. And I want to call a distinction to a sharp distinction between the awareness campaigns and the two others that are consideration and conversion. The distinction is, and where we've seen a lot of our clients do exploration, and even where our exploration was in years past, was to follow sort of our normal mantra, which is we fire up an advertising campaign, we use conversion-based bidding, right? The awareness campaign here that you see at the top here, the fascinating takeaway connects back to the point that you were referencing earlier in this conversation, Taylor, which is different bidding equals different device distribution. It dramatically so. The screenshot on the left, for those that are just listening, is showing the ad delivery across devices, and it's about 70% mobile. And it's using TCPA bidding. It's using conversion-based bidding. And it's about, what do you want to call that? Maybe 3% delivery onto TV screens. The screenshot on the right is so fascinating to look at. This is the awareness campaign, which is using not target CPA or maximize conversion or any conversion-focused bidding. Instead, it's using cost per view. And the distribution it couldn't be more different. In this case, it's 40% TV screens. And when we think about, when we hear these stats about like how much of YouTube is consumed not on phones and computers, what's been fascinating is we haven't really seen that as much in our data until we started to explore awareness bidding. It's just so cool to look at.
So this is so important because this is where we have to understand how much the optimization setting that we create in our campaign design affects the ad product that gets utilized. So if you ask Google to optimize for conversions, you're going to obligate it to delivery in the place where it can see conversions.
As a result of clicks.
That's right. And this is really, or very short view windows, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about the television piece, and this is why the Amazon extension of the distribution is so important in the measurement impact, or retail in a consideration for this product, is that the pathway to the realization of the purchase for the TV view, it's not that it doesn't occur, it's that it's non-direct and linear on a click basis to a website. And so in that case, you're going to under-consider the value without a more complex measurement system. So how then, Rachel, because I don't know that we would say that the answer is that TV is somehow better. Like it just means that you want views on TV. So how do we think about the consideration of when the TCPA or the conversion bidding matters versus awareness? And how do we help brands consider those different optimization and products relative to their individual state?
I think it comes like the full funnel strategy, obviously going back to the basics. Like if the objective of the awareness campaign is basically reach or like views, try to increase, like build the list for the consideration conversion stage. I'm sure like it all comes to objective of like what we're trying to get to, like what we're trying to accomplish using that stage of those audiences. And for awareness, like the reason why we were saying CPV is because we want to get more views. It's not the focus of that campaign is not going to be driving conversion. We're going to make the consideration and conversion stages to perform better because we're feeding it using that awareness campaigns that's getting more cheaper views, and finding new customers that's going to get funneled in to the consideration and conversion like stages.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's such an interesting architecture. The purpose of the top end campaign is think about it. What are we doing? We're bidding for views. So what do we get? tons of views, super cheap. We get what we asked for, Taylor, to your point about tell the platform what you want, they give it to you. And we see it. So the cost per view, so another interesting distinction between this bidding, the conversion-based campaigns have a much higher cost per view than the CPV bidded campaigns. On average, at least a quarter of the costs. So if your cost per view on a conversion campaign is 40 cents, on a CPV campaign, it's going to be 10 cents. Maybe we've seen lower. So dramatically cheaper views. And then we get to the vector of audience and how we think about structuring that through this lens. So when we think about audiences, let's put 3 categories of audiences out there from the Google standpoint. So we have Google audiences: demographic, interest-based, in-market, affinity, intent. I pray for the day when Google gets past this into the meta stage of broad audience. But right now we're in the Google landscape and the YouTube landscape. We're 4 or 5 years behind. It's sort of interesting to think about the trajectories of the two. Anyway, you have all the Google audience categories, and then you have your audiences. So your customer list, your website data, your video views, which is a super important part of this puzzle. And then there's a third category, which is referred to in the Google landscape as optimized targeting. Think about it as an expansion or a lookalike. So the way we're connecting these dots is when we think about these awareness campaigns, we're using, let me see if I can screen share this to make it bigger. Because we're not optimizing for conversion here, we're optimizing for views. We're also pairing that with Google's audience solutions. So we want to set up ad groups under this awareness campaign for demographic targeting, interest segments, in-market, custom intent, affinity. And all of these these sort of wide open top of funnel audiences go into this awareness campaign. Okay. And what we're doing is we want to run all of them and look for differences and look for takeaways and look for learnings that we can use to feed into the future stages. So connecting the dots to the next stage and why it's different, the consideration phase, now we're going to bring in your audiences, your customer lists, the website data and remarketing audiences. And a really important piece that we're bringing down the funnel with us, to Rachel's point earlier, is the video view audiences. So using the video view, the awareness campaign, bid intentionally for awareness for maximum views at the lowest cost, widest reach, paired with Google's widest audience targeting into the next stage of consideration, paired with conversion bidding and bringing in your audience layers into that campaign. Really, really fun stuff.
So I notice in this then, okay, let's talk. Oh, Rachel, you're going to add something? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say very sequential, very like strategic in terms of like considering the funneling of the audiences.
Okay, so now let's talk about something, because I noticed something in the syntax of that. If you want to pull that back up, it says
For sure.
Austin DMA. So I want to talk about, I don't think that we're suggesting, and I would never want someone to hear that we're saying that the goal of this campaign should be measured in the price of the view, right?
No.
In any way, shape, or form. And actually the relationship between these campaigns is then actually being measured distinctly from actually anything that the platform reports itself. And so how are you looking at, and this is a question for either, you can grab it, how are we looking and assessing this specific campaign? So for a client of ours, Storyworth, that's got a product that has these key peak buying moments, we've got this Austin DMA thing set up here. How are we actually looking at and assessing the impact of these campaigns together?
So, I mean, the answer is incrementality, right? So all of this is paired with incrementality. And I think the call out to the DMA thing, what's really interesting about YouTube and the way we can test it is, for many brands, for almost all brands, it's a new channel, right? So when we're testing and trying to find incrementality reads on Meta or Google or some large impact channel that's already running nationally, we have to go through different types of tests that are essentially holding out the media from a region. Well, YouTube's different. We're not running the media in anywhere already, or maybe we have a little bit of it. So the opportunity here is, in one of the key sort of testing points for us that we're leaning into is, focus this media exploration into a tighter region, whether that's a DMA or a city. And we have a bunch of data science that we bring in either through CTC's incrementality tool or in our partnership with House or Measure to make selections for these regions. But it's an advantage for us to deploy the incrementality testing to measure, to answer your original question, Taylor, around measuring the efficacy of the total investment. It's an advantage to us to be able to isolate that investment into a specific region and look for impact that way.
This is really important because I think this actually illustrates one of the challenges with incrementality, especially on a channel like Meta, where you've been spending a long time advertising nationwide, is that even if you turn it off on a Monday, there was a bunch of spend happening in and around that dollar in that channel for a very long period of time across a very broad set of users. Whereas in this case, this is like a fresh start in the sense that there were no YouTube dollars being spent. And so we can isolate the spend into a specific region versus having to hold it out in some other places. And so that testing modality actually, I think in a lot of ways is cleaner for expansion into a new channel. And so by designing the right budget allocation against the right testing region, we can then set up, synthetic controls for other areas where we aren't spending, compare the impact to make sure there's no other business issues occurring, and really find out what is the value of these media dollars over this period of time using these different optimization settings. This combination of use and awareness. What if we just go conversions? What if we just go awareness? And we can play with the impact. And we don't even have to just do that on just .com. Ideally, we are looking at 4 dimensions, to use Tony's term here, of revenue realization. We're looking at Amazon revenue, we're looking at .com revenue, and we're looking at new and returning customer revenue in both places. And we're trying to understand what is the halo across all of these elements to get the true return on invested capital in that region that we can then scale out and apply more broadly from there. So that's
really,
where you get to real powerful sequencing. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say that's a really interesting point, Taylor, because we are looking at incrementality on YouTube, but we have to remember that the more of the overall business performance is going to be affected on other channels as well. Like, it's not solely looking at YouTube in the beginning will be the case. However, we have to remember and know that it's going to impact across the business, like from different channels as well, positively, if it's actually working.
Well, yeah. And that's what, so yeah, I think 100% Rachel and also 100% Taylor in the sense that, okay, so backing up a step, what started this whole thing was CTC's expansion into incrementality measurement that all began last year. Okay. And then we started to do some incrementality tests on YouTube and we started to see some things that looked really compelling. Right. And we're just measuring the .com impact, to your point, Taylor. Like we haven't, I'm not aware of a full study that we have that rolls in the Amazon impact, but that's where we're going for sure. And then to add support to what we were seeing at the end of Q2, that like, hey, YouTube appears to be underreporting in platform from a click basis. The House study came out in early March that you mentioned earlier that Andrew had that great podcast on. So we have 8 or 10 incrementality studies that we did. They did 200. And what was fascinating is how close both of our conclusions were. And I actually have a slide for this that I think might be helpful. So this is attempting to represent like the difference between what we see and measure on platform for YouTube. And this is just a for example, like say YouTube reads 2-to-1 in platform. So all our incrementality studies at CTC came back at about 150% incremental. So the impact is 150% greater than what was showing in platform. And that was from approximately 8 or 10 incrementality tests that we had run at the time. So then we got the House report that came out in March, and theirs was almost identical. So it's really fascinating that both of our data sets kind of came back with this same read. And to add one more point here, in all the incrementality testing that we've done, what we see this really common theme, which is the platforms over-reporting their impact. It's true 95% of the time. There's only 2 spots where we've seen the opposite be true. One is super tight click only attribution on Meta, 7-day click attribution on Meta under reports the impact. The only other place where we're seeing this to be true is YouTube. And Taylor, to sort of bring it back to your point, all of this is based on looking at .com revenue and not including like a broader halo impact, including Amazon too. And so you could imagine this chart, if we had the Amazon sort of the full rolled up view, the incremental impact we would anticipate would be even higher than this.
Yeah, and I think this is where we have a hurdle to overcome with customers, is that the inverse being true, which is this idea that everyone's default assumption is that the platform overstates impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they go to the platform and they see such understated results, it's actually like in their heads worse than that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So to get them to detach, and MTAs don't really help with this problem, right? Like whatever measurement tool they're using, to get them to detach from the idea that result is actually overstated, to suggesting that no, it's actually probably understated, and we need to go and find out by how much. And here's a bunch of results that prove that it's understated. It's like that's the first step of belief that you actually have to get through to work to get them into a place of testing. Now, I think that this is where we're trying to help brands, and this is what I think the goal should be to do all the time, is have thoughtful, informed hypotheses that represent potential for large growth, design a clear mechanism for assessing an investment and a return in some short window, and then scale from there. And I'm not sure there's a clearer, simpler, cleaner hypothesis that's data-driven, plus a very simple testing exercise into large-scale impact than YouTube right now. There's enough evidence that has been published that this channel does provide incremental impact beyond what the platform reports. The testing budget required isn't in most cases massive. Now, depending on the brand and the media mix and the size, all these things, caveats there, but the investment relative to, again, the third part, the total scale of impact, if you get it right, I'm just not sure, and this is why we're pushing on this so much, there's a better thing to go try right now than this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that the total scale of impact, like, I don't know, you and I have these conversations all the time, Taylor, around like, is this worth going after, right? Is it worth the investment of time and energy and resources to pursue? And I think, Rachel, you and I were talking the other day, and I was like, pull up your screen time, you know, and mine was absurd. It was like 4 hours a day on YouTube. So I think that whole idea of like the audience is there, they spend the time there. The channel is different than search. It requires a different tactic. There's more vectors. It's tougher to measure, but it's worth it. And that's what we've been seeing over the last 6 months.
I have a question that we haven't talked about a lot that seems to get most of the oxygen as it relates to the other channels, and that's creative. So let's talk about the distinction and where you think brands should begin between. One of the things that I think makes a channel easiest to test is the portability of creative from already existing assets. So if I think about the sort of the form factor that is driving most of Meta, it's going to be more short form vertical video than it is going to be longer form 16:9 content. Do I need long form, different creative for YouTube? Can YouTube Shorts provide me the inventory that makes this level of impact? How should brands be thinking about the creative requirements to make this channel effective? And how distinct or unique do you think they need to be than what they're probably already running in TikTok, Meta, maybe App 11 as an example, Rachel?
I think regarding that kind of will probably show the slide later on, but it goes to the ad format. So in terms of using some creatives that we're already utilizing on like Meta and other channels, I think that will be perfect fit for basically the awareness stage where we have to get more reach and where a lot of times are being consumed watching shorts, like skimming through shorts and stuff. So like, I think that's where it can be used. But I personally think that land stage size that's more portable usable for YouTube's use is suitable for running consideration or conversion stages of campaign, because the objective of those would be to drive conversions. And I've noticed shorts, of course we can get a lot of like reach and like views on like using shorts. However, I've noticed in terms of the performance and driving conversions, it was showing much higher numbers on when we were serving landscape formats of the audiences. But Tony, you can ask more.
Well, yeah. So I think there's some trade-offs in this question. The portability of the content that's being created for Meta is really important. So to be able to not necessarily need net new creative to get started, I think is absolutely a part of the story that we're trying to carry through here. And to Rachel's point, for our top level awareness campaign, YouTube Shorts, grab your top content from Meta and your UGC, your unboxing, your creator content, and bring it over into an awareness campaign in YouTube and have it run as shorts. Makes perfect sense. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is if we are in fact pursuing a 10x investment on YouTube, and we believe the scale, we know the scale's there, we believe the results are there, you're going to need vertical horizontal video to get there because you're missing out on a bunch of the inventory without it. But I think the answer to your question, Taylor, is it's like a both end. It's like a yes end. The shorts product, the awareness buy is going to make for some interoperability with the content that you're producing. And it would be imprudent to think that you're going to crack YouTube without wide content.
And also adding on to that, I think it really depends on the objective. Are we trying to really expand the reach, or is it like the performance that we're trying to see? And then once the clients, we, assess whether what the goal is, what the primary objective is for the client is, then we can, start pushing more into awareness or consider pushing more into consideration. And at that point, if we need more creatives to fulfill that, then that's how we would have to start working on towards those goals.
I got one other thing to add to this because I think it's interesting. So some of the projects that I've worked on with it in this dynamic of like awareness campaigns and using shorts and interoperable content, we've had significantly more content that we've pulled from Meta into those awareness campaigns as shorts because of the vertical video. And we've had efficacy without having piles of content, wide content. So we've maybe we've made the pathway easier for ourselves and for our clients by not having to produce a bunch of distinct YouTube content that's wide, by leveraging this top of funnel strategy to push people into the deeper down.
I think it's just important whether like the goal is the awareness, then awareness, then it's more better to use the shorts because our goal is reach.
Yeah, I think this is where in my head, the best thing a brand could do is be thoughtful about how these tests overlap with production planning in their marketing calendar. So let's imagine you're sitting here right now and you have a new product launch coming out in June that you haven't yet gone and done the shoot for, that you're going to go produce your content. Is that in that media planning process, isolate that you want to create content for a test for YouTube as part of that production workflow for that period in isolation, design the test, design the budget, plan the assets in accordance with that moment to create the impact and see the efficacy. So then you can actually take the time to say, okay, because the worst thing you can do is go run a test and feel like that the result might be a byproduct of that you had the wrong creative for the medium, right? And so ideally you would have a confidence that you're walking into that. Now, some brands are sitting on libraries of this stuff. When we think about some of the 8 and 9 figure brands that we work with, they have Dropbox folders just overflowing with assets in every form factor that you could possibly imagine that aren't being utilized. And so this isn't really the hurdle. So this is where the individual state of each brand really matters in thinking about the test design and the planning process. But you want to feel really good that you are putting your best foot forward into that medium to be able to analyze the result in a way that you're not going to second guess yourself of whether or not that was the right creative for that channel or not. Understanding that if a result comes back, what you're looking for is promise, knowing that if you were to iterate and improve on the creative going forward, you can likely get to better results as well. And so I think all of those things have to be part of the consideration process as we go. All right. You got any last slides, Tony, for us? Anything else you want to make sure that we hit on as we wrap this up?
No, the incrementality, the measurement piece, what we're bringing to CTC clients as far as like the strategy piece is, instead of like there's a million different options, we have a pretty clear, like, this is the way we want to structure it. We want awareness campaign, consideration, conversion campaign. We want to use different bidding. We want to think about how we move the audience through those. Um, so like the strategy we have, we feel good about. It's gone through quite a few iterations. I'm sure it'll keep evolving. And then just like the logistical piece of how we're approaching this with brands that we partner with is sequential. Just like the media has a sequential nature, the idea of how we're like operating, we're taking brands through this journey of, small media investment into a really tight demographic, or pardon me, really tight geographic area, and then working on piecing that investment up and pairing it with incrementality as we go along the way. All the whole thing wrapped in this thesis, this question: can we help our partners move their media investment on YouTube 10x year over year? So,
Rachel, any last words?
I was gonna say, like, it really depends on the strategy. Like YouTube, like we all know, and that this is the reason why we're talking about this right now. We know there's value based on all the testing that's been ran by House or measured or CTC. So like, I think it's important whether this is a long-term strategy or a short-term strategy. Of course, incrementality really is gonna be important for us to give us like positive signals about, is this worth it? Is this worth for a business? But we also have to remember this is as we've seen on the view-based campaigns, this is a long-term strategy that we have to be patient on and keep testing and also refreshing our creative. So I don't think there's any wrong creatives, to be honest, but it's more so like, who are you serving in front of? Like, are you actually speaking to the audience that you're serving in front of? And if that long-term strategy and the short-term strategy that you're trying to achieve, it's met, then I'm sure we can meet that 10x YouTube with that patience.
Yeah, it's a great call out, is that if you look forward to the future of your business and you have plans to broaden distribution, you see a point of potentially diminishing returns in the core growth channels that you're in, then this is like a level one business imperative to solve this problem. There are just not that many channels that represent the kind of scale and broad-based impact to an omni-channel business than YouTube. And so to decide like, hey, as a business imperative over the next 18 months, we're going to solve for growth in this channel, I think it makes all the sense in the world for brands to pursue it. And again, I sit here having been one of the primary voices about cutting and efficiency and rigor of measurement. And I feel like many of you heard that and have participated in that, whether it was from me or other people in the industry. We moved that way. And now we sit here going, okay, but what about growth? Where do we grow? How do we grow? And that's an endlessly important question for businesses. And this is one of those bets to make. This is one of those places to look at and go, okay, thoughtful, disciplined, with measurement, rigor, planning, clarity, let's go for it. That kind of action is what a business should be looking to take over and over and over again. And this is one of those opportunities. So we'd love to help. If you're looking for a partner to help design the test, measure the test, deploy it, we think we're going to do it on a price that's going to be as competitive as anyone, in a structure that will make it really work for you. So if you're out there, you're on AmazonN.com, you've got broadening distribution, you're hitting a marginal frontier on Meta, this is an opportunity for us to talk. So come see Rachel, come see Tony. We'd love to chat. And if with or without us, go explore it. Go see what you can do. Thank you, everyone. Hope you're watching on YouTube.